Hi, in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to create a screwdriver in Solidworks. So we're going to start a new part, and I'm going to come down to the bottom right and change the units to inches, and I'm going to start a sketch here on the right plane. So I'm going to click on right plane, start a sketch, and from here I'm going to come up to circle, and I'm going to make a circle that's 0.197 inches in diameter. Once we have that set, I'm going to exit out of the sketch, and I'm going to come to features and do an extruded boss base. I'm going to make this extrusion, let's say 7 inches. Once we have that done, I'm going to look at the part from the front plane and create a sketch here on the front plane. And so from here, I'm going to select the center line, and I'm going to select the center of the circle as my first point and the origin as the second one. And so I've effectively drawn a line through the center of my part. From here, I'm going to drag out a 3-point arc. I'm going to place it here on the center, and I'm going to just lay down 2 arcs. And once I've done that, I can now click on the arc and select the center line and make a tangent, and I can do that with the other line as well. And so what you should have here are 2 arcs that are constrained as shown. And now I could add a couple more constraints. I may want to click on both of these points and make them vertical to each other. I may also choose to create a radius dimension here. So I'm going to make this 1/2 inch, and I'm going to make this one 1/2 inch as well. And so from here, this is about the direction I want to go in. The last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to connect this entire sketch so that it's fully solidified. And so now I can kind of drag it around, but I really want to set a dimension so that the sketch doesn't move around. So I'm going to select the center line I've created, and I'm going to put down a dimension. And I'm also going to create a dimension, or a constraint I should say, to constrain this line to this point. So I'm going to make them coincident with each other. And now I should have no problem exiting the sketch and doing an extruded cut. So I'm going to come over here to extruded cut, and I'm just going to select these 2 contours, and I'm going to do through all both here for my cutting direction, and I'm just going to hit OK. And so that's about what we want. Now the end would not be manufacturable in real life. It's not possible to create something that's that sharp in the real world. So we're going to have to do something about that. I'm going to choose to do a fillet on this part. And so I'm going to see what's possible just doing a simple constant size fillet. And so if I dial back this dimension, instead of 0.1 inches, maybe I could try 1/10 of an inch. And I can see where that brings me. You could see right here in the preview how much that is. So I'm going to set it to be 5/1000 of an inch. And I'm going to see that's kind of an easy way to kind of fix little errors and stuff that you may experience with your geometry. So we're just about done with the rod section. Now there are a couple more things that I want to do here. I may want to create a shape here so that when this rod is fit into the handle, it actually stays in place. And that's going to be very important. So I'm going to start a sketch, another one, now on the front plane. Now you can actually work in the same sketch that you've created before. So instead of creating a new sketch, I could actually, if I choose to, go to my cut extrude and open sketch 2, and I can create those features in the same sketch that I was working on before. So I can come here and select the center rectangle and just place it, where I believe it needs to be. I might set a dimension from the center of the circle to the origin, and I'm going to have that be 1.5 inches for this example. I'm also going to set a couple more dimensions here, 0.1 here and maybe 1 inch across. And what this is going to be is it's going to be a sort of keyway for the plastic to kind of meld into the rod. So I'm going to extrude this shape. I'm going to exit the sketch and go to Features, Extruded Boss Base. And so I need to make this sketch visible in order to use it. So I'm going to try that again. Extruded Boss Base, click on Sketch 2, and you should be able to select this as a contour. And by default, it may pop out at you because 7 inches was a dimension that we used before. But in this case, we just want this extrusion to only come out really a little bit more than our first dimension that we created. So let's set this to be 0.14. You're going to see that sticks out about as much as we want it to. So I'm just going to tweak this a little bit, and I'm going to hit OK. And so from here, we have our sort of keyway for the rod. And so I'm going to do one last thing. I'm going to create a circular pattern. So I'm going to select my feature that I created, my Boss Extrude feature, which is what we just worked on. And for my parameter, I really want to select this circle because this is the circle that I want to pattern around with this rod. So as you could see, it kind of gives us a preview of what it's going to look like. And I could even click here full preview, and it gives an even better preview. And so I'm just going to hit OK. And you can see that it's patterned it accordingly. So we're just going to leave it at that for this example, and we're going to move on to the handle. Now that we've created the rod for our screwdriver, we're going to go ahead and create the handle. So I'm going to start a new part again. And in this new part, I'm going to start again on the right plane, same plane that we started with before. So you can either click on the plane, and that's going to bring up the option to start a sketch from here, or you can come up here and hit sketch. And from here, I'm going to start with a center line right on the origin. I'm going to drag this out to, let's say, 3.8 inches. And if you need to, you can come to the bottom right and change the units. And so from here, I can set a dimension for this. And I can also start what's going to be the profile of the handle. And I plan on doing this in all solid features. Hopefully there shouldn't be any surface work that we need to do. This should hopefully be pretty straightforward. So I'm going to start by dragging out a 3-point arc. And so this is going to be the end of the handle, and this point here is going to be the front. We're going to decide on that right now. So I'm going to come and drag out an arc, and I'm also going to create a line that's a construction line. So once you click on line, you can go and click for construction, and you can make a line on this point. You can click on the line, click on the arc, and make them tangent. And from here, I can also pull out another line that's also for construction, set it on that point, and make these two tangent to each other. And that's going to allow me some more control here. As you can see, this is kind of a really easy way to control this arc of the back of the screwdriver. So from here, I'm actually, instead of creating it in this shape, I'm actually going to try something different. I'm going to delete this line. I'm going to change the arc, and I'm actually going to go and set another 3-point arc starting on this point. And you can actually move the dimension out of the way if you want. So I'm going to make these two arcs tangent to each other. And I think that's going to be a more interesting handle design. I'm going to do the same thing that I did before. Construction line, click on the point, make these tangent. And so from here, I can just keep doing the same thing. I think that 3-point arcs are a great tool. They make it very easy to work with. I'm going to make that tangent. And I can kind of set a dimension here between this line and this line. And I can make this a little bit smaller if I want. This is a great way to sort of control the whole height dimension that you're working with. So 0.7 is really going to be 1.4 because this is only half of the screwdriver. I'm going to drag this here. From here, I can create a couple more. So I'm going to start an arc that's going to come down like this. And these are going to be tangent to each other. I'm going to make these 2 points horizontal, meaning that they have to move horizontally together. And that also gives me some more control. And the trick with constraints is you want to get the model to a point where it's really easy to manipulate everything and anything. But you don't want to have too many constraints and dimensions that you can't move anything, unless you want to fully define your sketch. So that being said, I'm just going to finish this off with a couple more tangents. I'm going to make these tangent to each other. And I'm going to give a hard stop on this design. I'm going to make a line here. And I can kind of drag this, click and drag these 2 points until they merge. And then I can sort of play with, how much I want the end, how large I really want it to be. So I'm going to set this to be tangent to a line. So I'm going to bring out another line, make it for construction, click on the point, make these tangent. And from here, I'm going to set one more line. It's going to go from the origin to this point. And now we're ready to do our revolution. I'm just going to bring this out a little bit. It looks a little bit too small there. So from here, I'm going to come to exit the sketch, click on features, create a revolved boss base, and I'm going to select this profile by clicking on selected contours. Click on the contour, click on axis of revolution, and select this as your axis of revolution. And if we look at it from the side, we can see that our shape has been created now actually in 3D. And so from here, I can create a couple more features to kind of round this out. So I can make a feature here for the fillet at the end. So I don't need to create another line for that. I could really just create the feature right in the fillet right in the feature. So from here, I'm going to make a hole on this face. And this hole is actually going to be sized about the same as the rod. We now have the features on the rod that are going to help us with it sticking in place. So I'm going to set a dimension on here. And once that's done, I can do an extruded cut. And this extruded cut is going to come down almost to the end. And so from here, we have our hole, we have our handle, and we're just about ready to enter into our assembly. Before we continue, I want to show a sort of easy way that we can add a grip to this section of our screwdriver. So I'm going to start a sketch on the right plane, and I'm going to, on this plane, create a polygon, and I'm going to drag it out like so. And I also want to create a line that's a center line coming from the origin out that ends on the center of the front circle. And so from here, I can make the line and the center point of the shape coincident, and I can also click on this line and make it vertical. From here, I could set a dimension for this shape, which I want to be 0.1 inches. And once that's complete, I can move that to approximately here where the grip starts. I could even set a dimension if I'd like, converting this line at the end of the grip, making it construction, and then creating a dimension between here and here. So I can make this, I can really make this 0 if I'd like. And now it's going to touch that edge. And so from here, what I can do, I'm actually going to change this dimension. I'm going to bring it out 15 thousandths. From here, I can create a pattern. So this pattern is going to be a linear sketch pattern, which you could find up here in the sketch. So I'm going to first select the entities that I want to pattern, which are the lines of the shape. And once I do that, I could set a dimension for the x-axis pattern and the y-axis pattern. So one rule of thumb is this number here is the amount of instances that you want to have. So you need to have 2 on both directions, direction 1 and direction 2, if you want to have the pattern happen. Now, I'm going to bump up the y direction to be 1.15 as well. And you can see that if you click on the direction, that moves the sketches in the direction that we want. So I'm going to add a couple more instances, and I'm going to move this out, and I'm going to play around a little bit with the axes, moving them in, moving them out, whatever I feel is necessary to give it the shape that I want. So I'm going to add a little bit more here. I'm going to make this maybe 145. And that looks about good to me. I'm also going to, let's make it 0.14. Maybe 0.146. So from here, I'm going to go ahead and accept this. And so we have our shapes here. And so the next step is to create a mirror of the entities that we have on this side so we could put them on this side as well. So I'm going to select all of these entities. You can click and drag across to select them. And I'm going to mirror it about this line. And when I hit OK, you see that they all come up. And so from here, some of these are not really going to be useful to me. These shapes are kind of falling off of the shape, so I'm just going to go ahead and delete those, and I'm going to do the same for these ones at the top. And so once those are deleted, I can now use the sketch that we made to create a feature. So I'm going to exit out of the sketch, And I'm going to create an extrusion with this shape. So I'm going to go to extruded boss base, and this is going to be my sketch. The contours that we're going to use are all of the closed contours that we created. So when this sketch is selected, by default, all of them are going to pop up. So you can see that here. I'm going to make sure that merge result is turned off for this extrusion, and you're going to see why in a second. So I'm going to come up here and hit OK. And now we have our extrusion made. And so the next step is to come down here in our feature manager and move our end of part above extrusion that we just made. So from here, we have another clean slate again. I'm going to come up to the top and go to Insert, Surface, and Offset. So I'm going to click on this portion here, and I'm going to offset it by 25 thousandths, and I'm going to hit OK. Make sure that your surface comes outward and not inward. Now that that's created, I can roll my part back down. And from here, you're going to see that we have a lot of extrusions. That's because each of these extrusions has been made as a separate body, which we can always combine at the end. So I'm going to come up here and go to Surfaces, and then Cut with Surface. Click on Cut with Surface, and I'm going to click on the surface that I created and select the bodies that I want to cut. So I'm going to turn auto select off, and I'm going to select the extrusions. And once they're all selected, I can hit OK. And see, I've chosen to cut in the wrong direction. Here with this arrow needs to be pointing in the direction of what you want to delete. So in this case, I actually want to cut in the other way. So now you see the arrow is pointing in the correct direction. Now when I hit OK, you could see that that stubble, as I want to call it, has been removed. And so from here, I'm going to come down to our surfaces, surface bodies in our feature manager tree. I'm going to right click and hide it so that we could see our bodies that we've created. And so with this grip now made, I can choose to do another pattern. I'm going to go here to Features, come up here to where it says Linear Pattern, click on the arrow, and let's go to Circular Pattern. From here, I can select all the bodies that I want to create the circular pattern for. First things first, click up here at the top, and let's select one of the rings, which is going to be the actual circular pattern. To make it easier to select the bodies I need to select, there's actually a trick to it. Click on the first surface cut that you need, and then hold down Shift and click on the last one. You're going to see that everything is selected at once. Last thing I'm going to do here is change the number of instances to 3 instead of 4. And that looks about the way we want it. So I'm going to hit OK, and I'm going to see that my model has updated accordingly. The last thing we need to do in this part is take our Cut Extrude 1 and move it all the way to the end of our part. That way we cut through the extrusions that we just made. In addition, I want you to go and edit this Cut Extrude to cut all bodies in the feature scope, and hit OK. The last thing we need to do in order to create our screwdriver is to unite the rod and the handle in an assembly. So I'm going to come over here and click on Assembly. And with both documents open, I can click on the handle first, come up here and hit OK. And that's going to automatically place my handle at the location of the origin of this assembly. From here, I can click on Insert Components and click on the rod. Now I could drag out my rod and just place it in space. At this point, all I need to do is click on Mates here at the top, and then I can click on the concentric constraint, I can click on my rod end over here, and the circle at the front of the handle, and I can hit OK. Once I've selected these two things, they're constrained in this direction. All we need to do from here is set one more mate before we can finish. So select this face under mate and select the bottommost face of the screwdriver. You'll see that those two faces sit together. And once you hit OK, that's our part. Congratulations.